Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Today, I'm really happy to welcome a special guest, Teri M Brown, who's here today to talk about, among other things, not if, what, and we're going to talk about what that actually means. Teri calls the North Carolina coast home. Her debut novel, Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, is a historical fiction set in Ukraine. Her second, An Enemy Like Me, is set in World War II, and her third, Daughters of Green Mountain Gap, is a generational story about Appalachian healers. And her latest work, 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure, is an inspirational look at the life lessons she learned riding across the United States on a tandem bicycle with another person, I hasten to add, not on her own. So you can find Teri at terimbrown.com, and that is spelled TERIMBROWN.com. So, Teri, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Fantastic. So when we met in the pre-call and we were talking about what we might focus on to begin with, this expression, not if, what, came through, which was your expression. Would you like to kick off by telling us what that means?
Yeah, so let me give just like a little backstory as to where that came to me. I had ridden across the United States on a tandem bicycle with my husband, and that's over 3,000 miles. And I am not athletic. When I met my husband, which was 2 years before we went on this adventure, I had not been on a bicycle in 40 years. So this was huge and big and way outside my comfort zone. And we were finishing up. We were at the very last half mile. And I started to laugh and I started to cry and I started to laugh and cry and laugh and cry. And I was a complete emotional mess. But I thought, gosh, it's rode across the United States. Hey, Teri, on a tandem bicycle. I can do anything. It's not a matter of if I can do it. It's a matter of what do I want to do?
Yeah.
And that's where that came from. So it's this idea of, I don't know, I've got in me what it takes to do whatever it is I set my mind to. So, can I run a marathon? Yes, I can. Do I want to? No, I do not. So I will not run a marathon. And it isn't that I can't, because I know that if I chose to do it, if that was something that was a what on my list, that I could most certainly train and do what was necessary and complete a marathon. It's not on my what list.
Yeah. Presumably there are some things which, even with the best will in the world and all of the possible practice, etc., that you wouldn't be able to do.
Yes, I mean, of course. But I think that as long as we're being mildly realistic, like at this stage in the game, I'm 61, I'm not likely to become a doctor. Right? Because just the sheer volume of study and the sheer volume of hours that would take. And so, I mean, I guess it would be possible if that was really something I desired. You're right. I mean, there have to be limitations. I'm unlikely to become president of the United States at this point simply because I'm 61 and have never been in politics. I mean, there are things.
Although, in fact, that hasn't stopped everybody.
Well, that is true.
It's a good point, though. Yes. So some of the things are a question of how much do you want it, aren't they?
Yes.
You want it enough.
I would have to let's say to become a doctor, I would have to give up everything else in my life right now. I would have to give up being a grandmother. I would have to give up being an author. I would have to give up, there would be so many things. I'd have to give up the fact that I'm sort of semi-retired at this point and can lead life the way I choose. I'd have to give up a lot of things. So I'd have to want it an immense amount.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, are there limitations? Yes, but in our everyday experiences, if it's something that you want to try, if you want to be an author, oh, I can't be an author. I'm already in my 60s. Well, okay. Or I don't know. I want to start traveling. Okay. Would there be obstacles? Well, there are always obstacles. But if you really want it, you'll find a way around the obstacles. If you don't really want it, those obstacles will stop you.
Yeah. So the not if part means, does that mean it's not if I'm going to do something, but what I'm going to do?
It's not if I'm capable.
Right. Yeah.
Not, am I capable? Well, yes, I am capable. Could I run a marathon? Yes, I could. I am capable of doing that. It would take practice. It would take work. It would take training. It would take a lot of things, but I have what's in me to do that. I don't want to. So I would let the first obstacle get in my way. Ooh, I don't like the temperature today. I don't think I shall go out and run. I mean, it would take nothing to stop me. But I wanted this adventure. I wanted to make it across the United States on a tandem. I wanted it I needed to prove to myself that I could do something big and bold and outside of my comfort zone. And therefore, when obstacles came, and they came, I found a way around them. I mean, we rode during COVID.
That's extraordinary.
And so we canceled the trip at one point because we were not going to be able to start in the middle of May, like we said. And then we started coming up with, okay, we can't go this year. Maybe we could go next year. And if we can't do this, maybe we could do that. And maybe instead of riding in the summer, we could take a southern route and ride in the winter. And maybe and before long, we noticed that things were starting to open up just enough that we ought to be able to do it. And we decided we're going to go. And the worst case scenario is we'll have to rent a vehicle and drive ourselves back home. We're in the United States. We live in the United States. It's not going to be like we have to do international travel. We're going to give this a try. So we had things that kept jumping in our way and definitely tried to make it so that we could not possibly do this. We wanted it. And so we made it happen. Yeah.
That must have been very strengthening for you. Was that strengthening for you?
Yeah. So I talk to a lot of people. I was in an emotionally abusive relationship for 14 years. It was my second marriage. I did not want to get out of it because I didn't want to be divorced again. There's a big stigma about not being able to choose the right partner. And I just stayed in it. But once I got out of it, I was pretty damaged. You live in that kind of negativity for that long and you don't believe in yourself anymore. And I didn't feel like I had anything left. I didn't think I had strengths. I didn't think I had value. I didn't think all of these things, but I didn't think other people thought that I had strength or value. And so when I decided I wanted to do something big and bold like this, I thought I was proving to other people that I had strength and value. And it turns out that it was about me. I don't think there was anyone else out there other than potentially the ex-husband that had been abusive who thought that I didn't have worth and value. But I didn't know that. But I was having everyone see me the way I was seeing me. And this ride across the United States, when I would get up in the morning and do hard things day after day after day after day, and did it, and then succeeded in the end. Oh yeah, it gave me like unbelievable emotional strength. But I can do hard things. Look at me. Watch me go. And it changed a lot of those negative inner thoughts that you have, the ones that tell you you're not good enough, you're not doing it right. You get all of those things. It was like, no, that's not true. Look at me. I'm riding this bicycle today. I'm on mile 2,417, that kind of thing. And it's like, I obviously can do things. I obviously do look, I'm doing it. And for me, that 3 months was a time of healing. And I think that's why at the end, when I realized it wasn't a matter of if, but what, it was so freeing to recognize, oh my gosh, I have everything in me I need. Everything. Now look at me go.
How amazing. I love that insight of or the sense that everyone else doesn't value you was actually just coming from within you.
Yeah.
And that went away when you actually did something that was hard.
Hard.
But
Something that proved, yeah, something that proved to me, you know, that look, you can look at what you're accomplishing. Because like I said, for me, this journey wasn't like my husband. My husband, he did marathons, he did triathlons, he did hang gliders and scuba diving and all of this stuff. And me, I do things like walk along the beach and pick up shells. Okay, like I love the outdoors, but I'm not an athletic woman. I do not go and run races and do these kinds of things. So for him to go across the United States was something he'd always wanted to do, and he was very excited to have completed it. But I don't think he ever wondered if he could. His inability to do it had always been time and more time constraints. How do you do that and work, and all of the things. And for me, it was more about like ability. Like, could I even consider doing that? So for me, it was a different kind of journey where I learned a lot about who I was and what I was made of. And that even when things got hard, and even when I cried on the side of the road, which I did a lot, that didn't mean anything other than I was getting rid of emotion that would now allow me to go ahead and do what I needed to do next. And I learned that's who I am. I used to hate that about myself. I hated that I was so emotional and would cry. And now I just know it's part of my process. Because once I'm done crying, once I go ahead and do the, oh, I'm so good, then I say, okay, what do I need to do? And I can think clearly and I can come up with great ideas, and it's just part of my process. And so I think I also learned to be a little more gentle with myself. But it's okay. I'm an emotional person. I love my emotions. My emotions are what helps me write. My emotions are what helps me love so deeply and laugh so hard. You know, so is it okay that I also feel the depths of sorrow and pain and discouragement? Well, of course it is, because you can't feel the other half of that coin. You can't feel the the how high you can fly with happiness and joy if you also can't experience the depth of despair on the other side. And so the fact that I cry on the side of the road is no big deal. It's just part of who I am. And it has made me a lot more comfortable with myself. Yeah, this is me. This is me and how I do life.
how amazing! How amazing that you did that. And when you were crying on the side of the road, um, were you crying about anything in particular, or was it just simply, okay, I need to cry now?
Sometimes it was just it's hard. Like here we are. It's the middle of the day. We still have, 14 miles to go. It's hot. There's a hill in front of us. And I'm thinking, I don't even think I can go up this hill. I just wish we could stop. And I would just get all my feels, right? And I would start to cry. First time that happened, my poor husband had no idea what to do. We'd been married a little over a year, and he was kind of like, like, what am I supposed to do with her? I'm sure he thought that the trip was over and we were only 3 days in, and he was thinking, well, this is it. She's done. And he tried to comfort me, and it was like I didn't want him to touch me because that's only going to make me cry harder, and I just need to, and got myself together, and I said, all right, let's go. And he had this look like, I don't understand. You were just crying on the side of the road and now you want to ride. And I looked at him and I said, well, the next place to stop is 14 miles from here, and we aren't going to get there by standing here on the side of the road. And so he learned very quickly that this is my process. If she's crying, it's because she has a lot of emotion right now, and her best bet is to let it out so that she can get back on the bike and ride. And I just And it's kind of like life. I do the same thing. Something will happen, and my first thought and my first feelings are, woe is me, life is over as we know it, gnash our teeth, wail and cry. And I don't necessarily get that big with it, but I just feel like my whole world is falling apart. And I let myself feel it. And then I say, okay, where's my list? What can I do? And I just needed that moment of, "Ugh, life is over. Nothing's going as planned." So that I can then say, okay, life isn't going as planned. What do I need to do about it now?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's my process and I'm okay with it now, which is nice.
Well, I actually think that is a natural human process for any of us,
Yeah.
if we allow ourselves to have it happen. And I think, I think for a lot of us, if we are not permitting ourselves to cry or whatever it is, we are limiting ourselves, aren't we? You know, you had that release, which enabled you to then carry on and do something completely extraordinary
Right.
that you might not have been able to do if you hadn't.
No, if I had tried to hold all of that in, I would have given up because that would have been too much emotion to carry. You know, how do you carry all of that? And then by the time it finally did escape, it probably would have made me feel like, well, this is the end of the road. I can't go on, because it would have been really huge and overwhelming. And instead, I just kind of let it out, like one of those pressure valves, where you just let it steam out. And then it's like, okay, I'm fine now. And then it let it steam out. And that's just, like I said, though, I used to really be distraught with that. I didn't like the fact that I was emotional. I liked the happy part. I didn't like the what we consider negative emotion, right? I didn't like any of that and thought it made me weak. And it doesn't. It doesn't make me weak at all. It makes me human. And, weakness is if you don't keep pressing forward. If you want something and you quit pressing forward. Weakness is not having feelings of fear or doubt or despondency. Those things are just human. And it's what do you do with them?
Yeah. And it also strikes me as I'm talking to you, here we are talking about you cycling across the States, and that was way outside your comfort zone and very challenging.
Yeah.
And you're someone who's written several books. A lot of people would say that was a completely impossible, outside their comfort zone thing to do. And she's published them and she's sold them. And she's, oh my God, I couldn't possibly do that. So it's a good reminder as well that one person's comfort zone is completely different from another person's comfort zone.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I didn't start writing books until after this adventure.
Oh, really?
So I had written manuscripts, but never let anyone see them. So when we were finishing and I had that, not if, but what moment, my next question was, what do you want to do? And my answer was, I want to be an author. And 14 months later, my first book came out.
But you'd already done some work on it before.
Yes, I'd been writing manuscripts, but I hadn't let anyone see them because I didn't believe they were any good. And I didn't believe that I could be an author. And I didn't believe that I had enough value or worth that anyone were going to read anything that I wrote. None of that. And so this trip was transformative for me. Well, it took me from kind of a scared, just afraid to try new things, afraid to fail, because I already felt like a failure. I couldn't do anything that could potentially add more proof. And so I was just limiting myself to things that I could already do. And I just didn't see any way forward. And after that ride, it was like, oh my gosh, if I can ride across the United States on a tandem bicycle, then what else do I want to do?
So you were actually already a writer. You were a secret writer.
I was a secret writer, right? And I didn't let anyone know. Right?
So that's interesting as well. That thing of, okay, so you've written these books, so they actually physically exist, even if they're on the computer. They physically exist. There's the proof, the evidence that you can write because you have written something. And yet you were telling yourself you could not be an author.
No. And because I didn't believe there was any real value. I mean, it was like scribbling, like anybody could do this.
Yeah.
Anybody could do this part where you get this first draft out. Like anybody can do that. Well, it turns out that that's not true. There are a lot of people who do not have 80,000 words in them, who cannot put 80,000 words together into a story. And in my mind, I think because it came easily to me, like the stories kind of just fall out of me, that I figured that since it was easy, it must not be valuable.
I think that's something that a lot of people
Yeah.
have that one. The number of conversations I've had with people where I've said, what do you think is your greatest strength? And they go, I don't know. And I said, well, what about this? And they go, oh, no, that's, I've just always had that. Oh, so it's no value then?
Right.
Towards
Right. And
habits.
I think do to ourselves, where instead we look at other people and say, well, if I had that, that would be a strength. But what I have, that's just like anybody. If I can do it, obviously, then it's just it's not having value, understanding your own value. The fact that writing comes easy to me, that means it's a gift. And that means that I should be even more excited about putting it out into the world. And instead, I hid it because it must mean that I'm no good at it. It's just a bunch of blah words on a page. It must not mean anything. And I think some of it, the world does that to us. I mean, kicks us around a little. And then you throw them in a 14-year emotionally abusive relationship. And yeah, I could not see that what I wrote was going to have any value. And I had been told, because I had kind of flirted with the idea of writing and said it out loud, and was told, you would never be able to write fiction. And so I believed it. You just, I don't know. I don't know why I believed it, but I just believed it. And at the end of that ride, it was like, I don't think that's a true statement any more than any of the other statements he made were true. Because look at me, I am capable. I can do hard things. I can do things that people say I can't do. And if I want to be an author, then why can't I be?
And you can keep
Yeah.
going even when it's really hard, and you can go again.
And even if something doesn't work out right, you turn in a manuscript and you get nothing and nobody wants anything to do with it. Okay, so that one didn't go well. Does that mean that I'm not a writer? No, it means that this particular piece that I wrote, for some reason, is not connecting with other people. Okay. Yeah. And I've learned, like, I have a lot of what I call young writers, and I don't mean that in terms of our age, but in terms of not a lot of books out, haven't been doing it a long time, who get really distraught over reviews, and, oh, someone said this about my book. And I've taken the tact of, not everybody likes every book. I know this because I'm an avid reader and I do not like every book that I read. And I sometimes don't like books that other people really, really, really like. So I know that it is less about the writing and more about where I am in my life and what I'm reading and what I need out of a book. And so I see a negative review and I look at it and I read it, and I'll allow myself a moment or two of, I can't believe they would say that. And then I remember what I need to remember, which is not everybody likes every book, and I move on. I don't let that stop me. So if I had a manuscript that went nowhere, my thought process after I had my initial, feelings of rejection, which we're all allowed to have, would be, this piece just isn't touched. And we're going to set it aside, and maybe at another time this will come out and be okay.
And all the most famous writers have had rejections. Have you ever read Isaac Asimov?
Yes.
So, he is an incredibly well-respected writer. And in one of his books, he printed a whole series of rejections that he'd had.
Yeah.
And it was just fascinating. And the response he'd sent back, which might be a poem or something in response. He saw it as part of the dance of the thing. And
Yeah.
I think what you say is absolutely, and it's a very beautiful reminder as well, because one publisher, let's say, may not like it, another one may love it. And it's like,
sometimes it's just a matter of timing. they just picked up a piece that's similar and they don't want to try to put two of the same out at the same time, and yeah, and publishers, we I don't know, sometimes we get this idea like publishers are different than the rest of us. We're just like you and me,
Yeah.
so the fact that a publisher doesn't like your book, okay, and I often write things that are difficult, they feel are going to be difficult to mass market. Well, that's fine by me. I don't write mass market books. So the fact that you can't mass market it actually works for me just fine. And so I think you just need to recognize, whether you're writing or painting or working in a business field or whatever, you have to kind of recognize, what are you trying to get out of it? Right? And not worry about those people that don't fit into that plan for you. My
Wonderful.
books don't mass market. Okay.
And presumably a lot of what you're talking about comes into your latest book.
Yes.
Would you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it's called 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure. And, double-butted because two butts on one bike. So a tandem bicycle is a two-seater bike. And this is not a travelogue that you'll get a lot of fun stories from when we were traveling. It's things that I learned along the way, things that have become kind of mantras for me that help me when I find myself in a sticky, difficult situation. Like one of my favorites is never quit on a bad day. We had a horrible day. We had to ride 70 miles, which is a long day on a tandem bicycle. It was very hot. The wind was blowing at us, which meant that we had these headwinds that we were trying to ride against, which made 70 miles feel way longer. We had not one, not two, but 3 flat tires that day. So constantly having to take everything off the bike to fix the tire, put everything back, start again. And when we got done with the day, finally, I was done. I was done forever. I was never getting back on the bike. I was done. Well, I kept a blog the whole way across. And so at that night, probably right after dinner, I wrote my blog post and I put in it. I was very honest in this blog post and in all of my blog posts. And I said, I think we're done. It's no longer fun. We had said from the beginning that either one of us could say we're done and the other would understand. And I just think we're done. This isn't fun anymore. And I had a friend reach out just personally to me and tell me, what you've done is amazing. You've already made it over the Rocky Mountains. If you stop today, you have no reason to hang your head. And I'm going to suggest to you that you don't quit on a bad day. Give yourself a day or two of easy days, short days, restful days. Maybe go sightseeing and just don't ride for a day or two. And then if you still feel like quitting, then quitting is the right answer. And you can still hold your head high, because how many people do you know ridden over the Rocky Mountains on a tandem bicycle? But if you quit today, you will always wonder if you had stuck with it, if you could have made it. And then she said, whatever you decide, I'm really proud of you. And that was the end of it. And I thought about that and thought, okay, she's right. We're going to, it was maybe a Tuesday. We'll wait until Friday and we'll see what we think. Well, the next day was a fabulous day. The wind was at our back. We blew into town. We were done riding by 10:30 in the morning. We had already gone 35 miles. We ate a second breakfast. We slept all afternoon. We got up and had dinner and slept all night. So the next day we were rested. And even though that next day wasn't as good, it's okay, because we now had a different mindset. We felt good. And of course, we made it the whole way across. So I use that now all the time, this never quit on a bad day. We shouldn't quit when we're hungry, when we're tired, when we're emotionally distraught, because at the end of the day, when you're hungry and tired and the day hasn't gone well, something as simple as my shoes feel too tight can stop you from wanting to go forward, right? And wouldn't that be a silly reason to stop doing something you really want to do? I try to remind people, though, that I'm not saying don't quit, because it is perfectly okay to say this thing that I was doing that I thought would bring me joy is not, and I don't wish to participate in it any longer. It is okay to say that. So quitting is, you know, I used to be told, oh, we don't quit. Well, yes, we do quit. It's okay to quit. I was in a 14-year emotionally abusive relationship. It was okay to quit that. Right? It'd be okay to quit the ride because it wasn't giving me what I had hoped I was going to get out of it. But don't quit in an emotional explosion of, can't do this anymore. And so I use that. I've used it, a number of times since then, where it's just been don't quit on a bad day. Give yourself a break. Put it to the side for a little while. See what it looks like in the morning.
Yeah. Very, very wise. Yes. I think I kind of intuitively know that one. And
yes,
there's also that you can apply that in a relationship. Don't quit.
Absolutely.
Don't end the relationship in the middle of a row.
No.
If you, after you've calmed down, you resolve the row, and a couple of days later or a couple of weeks later, if you still want to quit, that's another matter.
That is another matter. And I think that it's something that people need to understand, that difference between quitting on a bad day and deciding that you're done. When you quit on a bad day, I don't think there's a lot of decision making going on. It's a very emotional, it's just an emotional reaction to whatever bad has happened. And you're just, throwing your hands up in the air. And it may be that bad thing that happened is the final straw and will make you decide that you are quitting. But don't do it in the midst of that. Allow yourself a little time and space so that you can say to yourself, this is a pattern. This kind of bad thing happens over and over and over and over, and I don't have joy anymore in this.
Yeah.
And so I've made a rational, thoughtful decision to let this part go and move on to something else. And then I think that stopping what you're doing is absolutely the right thing to do.
Absolutely. So to get the other rules, they're going to have to get the book. Now,
Get the book, right?
Can they get the book on terrymbrown.com?
Yes, you can get it there. If you live in the United States, I'll send you a signed copy. If you don't live in the United States, I can't send a signed copy because the cost to you would be prohibitive. No one wants to spend that kind of money on postage. But you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. You can get it pretty much anywhere that you can get books. Right now, it's available in paperback and hardback, and I've got the ebook should be coming out shortly. So,
and will there be an audiobook as well?
I'm thinking I'm going to do an audiobook. I talked with my publisher about it. It would be in my voice because it's my book. It's my memoir. I can't imagine letting anyone else read it. But the timing, I'm not sure of. So we're going to have to I'm not a professional speaker, and I don't know how long it would take me. Like it would be a big endeavor. It would be a big endeavor. And so I'm going to have to I'm playing it by ear, but yes, it is in the works. Whether or not it happens quickly or it takes, up to a year, I'm not sure, but I intend to have it out there. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, there are a lot of people these days that you can hire to kind of support you through that process, aren't there?
Right. And I would need something because I couldn't be in the room that I'm in. It would echo too much. I know that there's a lot of things about the sound quality that would have to be just right. So at the very least, I'm going to have to find a sound booth that I can be in, that they have the right equipment to do everything. Because if I'm going to put an audiobook out, I want it to be professional. I don't want it to sound like I did it at my computer in my office. Right.
And you might want someone to help you look after your voice as you
Yeah, exactly. Because that's a lot of reading. That's a lot
of reading. One of my very close people used to be a sound engineer years ago.
Yeah.
And every now and again, I'll be on the phone and he'll say, Catherine, you've got to rest your voice. Did you do a lot of talking over the weekend? Well, yes, I did. I was running a workshop. Okay, you need to rest your voice for the next 3 days.
Yeah.
And I just have to realized.
Right. Right, because you just are you're just going to keep going, and he can hear the difference in.
You can hear that I'm about to hurt my voice, so I just need
Yes.
to rest it. And okay, yes, boss.
Yes, boss. Thank you so much. Hot tea for you, right?
Exactly. So I'm going to slightly swing it slightly for this last bit of the conversation. Uh, I think a lot of what you're talking about could be very valuable for people who are trying to be good leaders in different ways, like people who are trying to stand in their sovereignty and be leaders in their own lives, or people running businesses or running communities or whatever. And they're trying to be part of the solution in this interesting, challenging world that we're in.
Right.
Um,
Right.
is there something you'd like to say to those people in relationship to some of what you've been talking about today? Because you've got this really unique take on this whole thing of not if, what. And I wondered if that kind of
Yeah.
applies in that.
I had never thought about it in terms of leaders. I've always thought about it in terms of like single people, not single, like not married, but like single individuals doing their life. And what I would say to those people has been, you have in you what you need. So if you can't access that, then find someone that can help you access it. You know, for me, doing this trip helped me access pieces that I had buried and lost. You don't have to ride 3,102 miles on a tandem bicycle to get that. But it could be something like talking to a good friend or a therapist or a pastor, or reading a particular book that helps you understand your value. So I guess with a leader, it would be some of the same things that as you lead, you have in you those leadership abilities. If you feel like you're failing at it, or not, it isn't what you're wanting, or then it's in you, you're just not accessing it. So find someone, a coach, someone that can help you access those qualities that you have, that will allow you then to go forth and make the changes that you want to see in the world.
That is beautiful advice. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
So we've talked about quite a lot today, Teri, and
Yeah.
I could very happily talk to you for hours. Fascinating. And I'd love to see your book. Has there been a favorite part of our conversation for you today?
For me, just the ability to talk about that ride, and to remember, and to remind myself. It's so easy. I did this a big, amazing thing. In the meantime, this, my husband has passed away. He had a glioblastoma, which is an incurable brain cancer. And so I'm kind of at a crossroads again, where I'm having to start over. And you'd think, well, she wrote this book with these 10 little rules, and this should be like an easy thing, right? She knows what to do. But boy, do I forget them. You're in the throes of your emotions and your grief and all, and you can forget things like rule number 3, do hard things. You can forget things like know your why, understand why like define your success. Like, what does that look like to you? You can forget those things because it's easy to get wrapped up in the grief, and the being a little scared about where you're going next and what's going to happen and all of those things. So I think when I have talks like this with people, it reminds me who I am, that I am strong, that I do have these things in me. And, like I have a bookmark, and on the back of the bookmark, it has all 10 of the rules. So I don't know if you can see it that way, but it has all 10 rules. And I leave them in different places around my house, so that every now and then, if I'm feeling a particular way, I might look down and go, okay, focus on now. That's what you need to be doing right now. And it just reminds me. And so I think my favorite part of this with you is that it was just a good reminder again of, I am capable, and I can do these hard things, and that it, just because it isn't easy doesn't mean it's not doable. And, that if you and I were to talk a year from now, that you would see that I had figured out from where I am to where I'm going, And that aren't we all in that state?
Yeah.
You know, hopefully nobody that's listening today will be the same 1 year from now. Right? Hopefully we've all continued to grow, and that I'm also doing that. That my path, though it might not be one that I chose, no one would choose to lose someone they love. I'm still on a changing path that everyone else is also on a changing path. And so it's not that much different from other people in a lot of ways. And that's okay that I'm struggling and wondering, because we all do at times.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
And the final thing I'm going to ask of you, if you'd like,
Yes.
because it's really great sometimes for the listeners to have some sort of reflection or contemplation question to take away with them for the week, to help them kind of connect more deeply with what we've been talking about. So I wondered if you would like to offer something to the listeners, kind of a question for them to contemplate.
Yeah. So my question would be, what is on your bucket list that you want to do? And then I want you to take it off your bucket list and put it on your to-do list and come up with what's the one thing you can do this week that will move you toward doing that thing. When I decided I wanted to do a big adventure and we came up with this idea of riding across the United States on a tandem, I could not have left that same day. There was a lot of work that needed to be done for me to be able to do this adventure. So what is it on your bucket list? And then what's one thing you can do this week that will move you toward doing that thing, instead of leaving it on a bucket list that you may or may not ever get to do?
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Teri.
You're welcome.
A great conversation. So thank you, listeners. That's all for Truth and Transcendence for today. You can find our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. And be sure to give us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, and share with your friends. And also comment on what we were discussing today. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time. And thank you so much, Teri, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.